Hey guys, this is Babs Tripathi and welcome to another video. And today we're gonna carry on with our topic that you might have watched, but if not, I suggest you go back and watch it or look it in one of the things, and that is called What is GTM Engineering? So today what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about a topic, and that is okay, I know what is GTM engineering. But what does a GTM engineer actually do? And, that's a great question because a lot of people ask it. Like, what exactly go to market engineer do? They're not supposed to be a traditional engineer. Then what do they do? And of course, I talked about it in my last video that what they're trying to do is with AI, this field or this title has accelerated it. And of course, that leads to the obvious question that we're going to discuss today is what do these people do? Because they are not a traditional programmer or they might not even have a computer science degrees, if you will. But the easiest way to look at what happens after, say, a customer signal enters into your go-to-market platform. So let's go back. I think in the earlier video I talked about is what happens when someone from a target company or a target account visits your pricing page or plan page. So most companies can detect that, right? Maybe the account gets few more points in a lead scoring model, traditional lead scoring model, or say somebody gets a ping in Slack. But still that activity sits inside your marketing automation platform. But now, as a JTM engineer, what if we went few steps further? What if the system now could look at that plan page, pricing page, then pull the account history from Salesforce, look at the recent marketing email engagement, for example, and understand that, hey, guess what? This opportunity was already there, and now we have more signals coming in from other folks inside that company or that account. So, what does that mean? Somebody's talking about your company within that account, right? So now this pricing page visit is not an isolated case that just happened, but we can connect it. And once you have context, then AI can determine how it can help you take the next steps back better. So maybe the salesperson, let's say, gets an alert of simply saying, "Hey, Bob from company X visited the pricing page." So the system summarizes with that account, let's say over 90 days, that, hey, Bob visited this page like 5 times. And, now with AI, we can match these signals together and recommend what is the best action or the next step forward, right? So those are the things, right, that we are seeing when it comes to signals and engineering and stuff like that. But now this is very different from the traditional automation that we have built for years. So for example, if pricing page visited, then send Slack notification. That is how it used to be, like a rules base. The difference is now we are bringing together all the signals, organizational context, and reasoning before deciding what action should take place next. And that's where we start moving from basic go to market automation towards something much closer to an intelligent GTM system. So then the question is, so is GTM engineering basically RevOps with AI? And obviously people ask this a question a lot and I hear this a lot and I understand where it comes from, right? Because there is definitely overlap because again, RevOps was not a function we had 20 years back. But because of this different functions, sales, marketing, customer success, that's where RevOps came, right, in existence. And what they used to do was a lot of data forecasting, handoffs, and a lot of what GTM engineering is becoming wouldn't be possible without that RevOps foundation. So it's not replacing it for sure. But I think GTM engineering takes this idea, this concept in a slightly different direction and basically unifies it in a holistic manner. And we ask, how do we make this process work better? But as a GTM engineering engineer, we should also be asking, what could we build so this process works differently? Maybe that's a workflow across several different systems. Maybe it's an automation. Maybe many agents are working together in tandem. Maybe it's connecting platforms that weren't connected before. Or maybe that's a small internal app that gives a salesperson exactly the information they need instead of asking them to hunt through four different tools. Because at the end of the day, we want them to be more productive. And increasingly, it might also involve something like an MCP, model context protocol, where AI can interact with all these different tools and data sources, which is already inside an organization. But here's something that I think is really important. Sometimes the answer is no tech at all, So a GTM engineer might look at a workflow and realize that, hey, guess what? The current process makes no sense at all. So if you put AI on top of a broken workflow, it doesn't suddenly make it a good workflow, or, you just created a much faster way of executing a bad process. So it's not just laying AI on top of it. So part of GTM engineering is actually also stepping back far enough to understand what should happen before deciding what should be automated or what should be built. That's the human judgment. So then the question is, who becomes a GTM engineer, or who can be really a good GTM engineer? And it's a great conversation, and I love it because when we hear the word engineer, we immediately think about software, code, things like that. But how many software engineers are actually writing code these days? And yes, some GTM engineers will absolutely come from engineering background. No question about that. But I am not convinced, as a marketer, that that's where all or even necessarily most of them will come from, because this job, the GTM engineering job, actually requires very different understanding. The reason is you need to understand sales well enough to understand why a rep isn't following up on opportunity. It's not an engineering problem. You need to understand marketing well enough to distinguish between a vanity engagement signal and something that actually indicates buying intent. So, of course, you need to understand data well enough to know what information exists, where it lives, and whether you can trust it, right? And you need enough technical fluency to understand what's an API, what's an automation, what are agents, what is an MCP, what can realistically be built or connected, and not just the latest Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini models. But you also need enough business understanding to step back and ask the most important question: does any of this actually move the needle? Meaning, does it actually matter to revenue? And that's an unusual combination of skills, I think. And it's not something you can be taught in 1 year or 2 year. That's why I think going forward, we'll see a lot of GTM engineers emerge from all kinds of background, marketing, ops, RevOps, product, or even senior go-to-market leadership. And I could include myself in that. And the common denominator isn't necessarily that they spend 10 years writing great software or great code because the assistants are doing it. It's what they understand the business problem and have enough technical capability to build or orchestrate the solution. And what's happening with AI is it's making that combination much, much powerful, because the barrier between having an idea and actually building something is dropping incredibly quicker, right? So the GTM to me is, in a nutshell, an orchestrator, right? He may not be playing the instrument, But he knows how to orchestrate, right? And that is what I found the most interesting, because AI makes the act of building something easier and the value moves upstream, right? So the question not only is, hey, can you build this? But it's increasingly, or it's going to be, once we are out of this phase, which is, should we build it? And what should it do? What information does it need? And what systems does it need to connect? And how does it connect in the way people actually are working right now? And that's orchestration, because marketing has one view of the customer, obviously. Sales is another. Customer success is another. And of course, product has whole different view. And of course, your CRM, like your Salesforce or HubSpot for now, knows certain things. Your traditional marketing platform knows few things, platforms like Gong and whatnot. Your analytics also has certain set of signals. Um, so I think you know where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with this is, all these platforms were great, but somewhere across all those systems is probably the context that tells you why an account or a company is going to buy. Are they going to churn, or they're going to completely ghost you and disappear? The problem is that very few organizations have actually connected all of that context into a system that can consistently decide what to do next. And I think that is exactly where the GTM engineer is sitting. And where it is between the business and the tech, because the barriers have gone down or almost vanished. And that's the signal and the action. So a business person can decide that really faster. And a business person can also decide what to do with that context, with that knowledge. And where we are going now is, we're going from GTM engineering to AI native. And this is also, I've been thinking about it a lot with GTM engineering through a framework which I have developed, and it's called Intelligence Loop. And Intelligence Loop looks something like this. You have signals, then you have memory, then you have reasoning, then you execute, then you learn with that loop, right? And that's intelligence loop. And the idea is pretty simple. But something happens somewhere in that GTM system, and that's the signal. And that's what we are building at the Vibe Marketing.ai. So before reacting to it, the organization typically knows, about the customer, their account, their situation. And when an organization knows so much about a customer, that's context. Now, you can take AI or a combination of AI and predefined business logic, for example, and it helps you determine what that information actually means. And that's reasoning. From there, something happens, right? So maybe a human gets involved, or maybe a workflow runs, or maybe an agent takes an action on your behalf. And that's called execution, which is part of my intelligence flow, a loop. And then whatever happened as a result becomes additional context for the next decision. And that's called the learning, or the learning loops. And again, that's part of my intelligence loop. So when you look at most organizations today, they already have some pieces of it, obviously. They certainly don't have a shortage of signals or data. We have so much data. We all are swimming in data. We have CRMs, automation, call recordings, intent platforms, product analytics, the whole suite of SaaS platforms. And every day, additional number of tools are exploding. But what we've learned, what I've learned is, actually what is missing is the connective tissue, if you will, between all of them. And I think that's ultimately, well, GTM engineering becomes much bigger than simply another job title or a cool title, it's about figuring out, right? How should everything work together, so, the current software can do more and execute predefined rules. And obviously, in the last 10 years, 20 years, something, we spend an enormous amount of time building the GTM tech stack. Like, there's all kinds of data. What's your tech stack? What's the visual? But now we are entering a period where the bigger opportunity may be figuring out how to actually make that stack operate as an intelligent system. And that's the problem I think and I know GTM engineers are going to be asked to solve. And that's the problem we are solving at the Vibe Marketing. So yeah, take a look on my side. But yeah, that's all I have. And just wanted to give you some more context and some more definition on what GTM engineer actually do. So thank you so much for sticking around and watching.